Nabigo si Alex Eala sa kanyang rematch kay world number 2 Iga Swiatek sa Madrid Open. Bagamat mabangis ang simula ni Alex, nagawang makabawi ni Iga.
Hindi ko pa mapaniwala. Maraming salamat sa suporta. Sana patuloy yung suporta niyo sa akin.
I think every player in the tennis still wants to adopt the Filipino community to have them cheering behind them. How loved did Pinoys make you feel playing here?
The scream heard round the world. Dyan Castillejo exposes the rigged system destroying Alex Eala, and the 12 words that silenced the WTA forever. It was a moment that didn't just stop a press conference. It stopped the entire tennis world in its tracks. The air inside the Rizal Memorial Tennis Center was already thick, suffocating, and heavy with the kind of humidity that clings to your skin like a second shirt. But in the media room, the temperature wasn't rising because of the Manila sun. It was rising because of a firestorm that was about to ignite, a firestorm sparked by one woman standing alone against $1 billion establishment. Dyan Castillejo. For decades, she has been the voice of Philippine sports, poised, professional, the epitome of grace under pressure. But on this Tuesday afternoon, the grace was gone. In its place was a raw, trembling fury that terrified the tournament officials standing in the back of the room. The losing finalist, a teary-eyed Eala, had just been ushered out of the room, her head bowed low, the weight of another brutal loss crushing her 20-year-old shoulders. The reporters were packing up their microphones. The cameras were turning off. The narrative was already written. Eala falls short again. Tough luck. But Dyan Castillejo wasn't letting them write that story. Not today. She didn't just speak. She detonated. I feel sorry for her. Castillejo's voice rang out, cutting through the chatter like a knife through canvas. The room froze. Head snapped up. The camera operators, sensing blood in the water, frantically scrambled to hit the record button again. The red lights flickered back to life. Castillejo wasn't looking at her notes. She wasn't looking at the other journalists. She was staring directly into the lens of the main broadcast camera, her eyes blazing with a mixture of heartbreak and rage that we have never seen from her before. I feel sorry for her, she repeated, her voice shaking not with fear, but with the adrenaline of someone who is about to burn a bridge to save a life. She's constantly being pushed into brutal draws at the biggest tournaments, while the top players cruise comfortably into the later rounds. The silence that followed was deafening. You could hear the hum of the air conditioners. You could hear the distant traffic of Manila. But inside that room, nobody dared to breathe. Castillejo had just said the quiet part out loud. She had just accused the tennis establishment, the WTA, the Grand Slam committees, the tournament directors, of a conspiracy against their own rising star. But she wasn't done. Castillejo took a breath, leaned forward, and delivered a warning that will be replayed in tennis documentaries for the next 50 years. 12 words. That's all it took. 12 specific, carefully chosen words that hit the room with the force of a forehand smash. And when she said them, you could physically feel the shift. The officials in the back exchanged panicked glances. The journalists gasped. Because in just 12 words, Dyan Castillejo didn't just defend Alex Eala. She declared war on the entire system. What were those words? Why did they terrify the establishment? And is she right? Is there a deliberate, systemic effort to crush the rising stars to protect the old guard? Today, on Champions Tennisitics, we are not just reporting the news. We are investigating the crime. We are going deep into the draws, the data, and the dark underbelly of professional tennis to answer the question that Dyan Castillejo screamed into the void. Is the game rigged against Alex Eala? Buckle up. The truth is uglier than you think. To understand the fury in Dyan Castillejo's voice, you have to understand the context of the last 6 months. You have to look at the brutal reality of Alexandra Eala's life on tour. Let's rewind to January 2026. The Australian Open. Alex Eala arrived in Melbourne playing the best tennis of her life. She had just cracked the top 50. She was fitter, stronger, and more dangerous than ever before. She had spent the off-season at the Rafa Nadal Academy, grinding in the dirt, perfecting a serve that was now clocking speeds we hadn't seen from her in 2025. She was ready. She was hungry. And what did the random computer draw give her for the first round? Did she get a qualifier? No. Did she get a wild card ranked 150? No. Did she get a fellow mid-tier player to warm up against? Absolutely not. The computer randomly selected her opponent, and when the name flashed on the screen, a collective groan went up from Manila to Madrid. Eala drew a top 10 seed. Again, while the world number 1, IGA Swiatek, was drawn against a player ranked 98, a match that was effectively a glorified practice session, Eala was thrown into the lion's den immediately. She fought. God, did she fight. She took the first set to a tiebreak. She scrambled for every ball. But when you are playing a top 10 machine in the very first round, there is no margin for error. There is no time to settle your nerves. You have to be perfect from the first point. Eala lost in straight sets. First round exit. The casual fans looked at the score and said, "Oh, Eala lost early again. Maybe she's not ready." But the experts knew better. They knew that if Eala had been in the other half of the draw, the half where the stars were protected, she would have easily made the third or fourth round. She was playing top 20 level tennis, but she was being forced to play top 10 opponents before she could even unpack her bags. And it didn't stop in Melbourne. Fast forward to the Philippine Women's Open this week. The homecoming. The tournament was built around her. The posters all over Manila featured her face. The stadium was sold out every single day. This was supposed to be her coronation. And what happened? Once again, the draw was a nightmare. While other seeds faced struggling opponents, Eala was placed on a collision course with Camilo Osorio, a player who, despite her ranking, is one of the most dangerous, gritty clay court specialists in the world, playing on a surface that suited her grind perfectly. It wasn't a first-round match, but it was a quarterfinal that felt like a final. It was a bloodbath. 4-6, 4-6. Eala played her heart out. She saved break points. She hit winners that made the crowd erupt. But she was exhausted. Why? Because her first 2 rounds were wars. She had been forced to battle through 3-set marathons just to get to the quarters, while the other top seeds had breezed through against hapless opponents. By the time she faced Osorio, Eala was running on fumes. This is what Dyan Castillejo saw. She didn't just see a loss. She saw a pattern. She saw a young woman being set up to fail over and over again. It's not bad luck anymore, one insider whispered to me after the press conference. It's a statistical anomaly. The odds of Eala drawing this many top 20 players in the first or second round over the last year are astronomical. It's almost impossible. Almost impossible. Unless, of course, it's not random. To truly understand the injustice, we have to look at the other side of the net. We have to look at the players Dyan Castillejo was referring to when she said the top players cruise comfortably. Let's look at the path of the big 3 in women's tennis. When the draws are released, have you ever noticed how the top stars rarely face a dangerous floater in the first week? They get qualifiers. They get lucky losers. They get players who are returning from injury. The establishment will tell you this is just how seeding works. They will tell you that the top seeds earn the right to easier matches. And to an extent, that is true. That is the reward for being number 1. But there is a difference between an easier draw and a cakewalk. In 2025, we saw top 5 players reach the quarterfinals of slams without facing a single opponent ranked inside the top 50. Not one. They were fresh. They were confident. They had barely broken a sweat. Meanwhile, players like Eala, ranked 45, 48, 50, are fighting for their lives in the trenches. This system creates a self-fulfilling prophecy. Because the top stars get easy early rounds, they save their energy for the finals. Because they reach the finals, they get more points. Because they get more points, they stay at the top. And because they stay at the top, they get the easy draws again. It is a closed loop, a VIP club. And the bouncers at the door are the tournament directors who decide the wild cards and the seeding formulas. And if you are on the outside looking in, like Eala, you have to be twice as good just to get half as far. This is what broke Dyan Castillejo. She watched Eala, a girl she has known since she was a child, a girl she has watched bleed and sweat on the practice courts of Quezon City and Mallorca, bang her head against this glass ceiling over and over again. She watched Eala pull off the miracle in Miami in 2025. Remember that? The semifinal run? That wasn't a run. That was a rampage. She beat Madison Keys. She beat Yelena Ostapenko. She beat IGA Swiatek. She proved, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that she has the talent to beat the best in the world. So why, a year later, is she still being treated like a qualifier? Why is she still fighting for scraps? Why does the system refuse to recognize her status? Which brings us back to that press room. Dyan Castillejo had finished her rant about the draws. She had laid out the facts, but she knew that facts aren't enough. The tennis world is full of facts that nobody cares about. She needed to make them feel it. She needed to scare them. She paused. The camera zoomed in. The room went silent. She looked at the journalists, then at the officials, and then straight into the soul of every tennis fan watching at home. And she said it. You are killing the future of tennis to protect the present stars. The aftermath of the press conference has been seismic. Social media exploded with fans from around the world sharing their own stories of perceived injustices in tennis draws. Former players began speaking out, some anonymously, about the behind-the-scenes pressures that tournament directors face from broadcasters and sponsors. One retired player told a tennis podcast, "Everyone knows the draws aren't as random as they claim. There are ways to influence outcomes without technically breaking the rules. It's been an open secret for years." The WTA's silence on the matter has been deafening and telling. In the age of social media, where organizations typically respond to controversies within hours, the fact that the WTA has said nothing speaks volumes. They know that any statement they make will be scrutinized, dissected, and used as evidence one way or another. So they have chosen to wait, hoping that the story will blow over, that the next tournament will shift attention elsewhere. But this story isn't going away. Dyan Castillejo made sure of that. By framing her argument in such stark, memorable terms, by delivering those 12 words with such conviction and passion, she created a rallying cry that transcends any single tournament or any single player. You are killing the future of tennis to protect the present stars. Those words will echo every time a draw is released. They will be quoted every time a young player faces an impossible matchup. They have become the lens through which fans will now view the sport. Eala's response to the controversy has been characteristically classy and focused. While Castillejo was fighting her battles in the press room, Eala was already looking ahead to the next challenge. Her social media post from the airplane, with its simple message about continuing to work, reflects the mentality that has gotten her this far. She understands that complaining won't change her ranking. Only winning will. But that doesn't mean the fight for fairness isn't important. It just means that Eala trusts others, like Castillejo, to fight that battle while she focuses on what she can control: her preparation, her fitness, her mental strength. The Rafa-Nadal connection adds another layer to this story. Nadal built his legendary career on the principle that you never make excuses. You never complain about the draw or the conditions. You just fight. That philosophy has clearly influenced Eala. But even Nadal, for all his stoicism, benefited from a system that respected his achievements and protected his seeding. When Nadal was ranked in the 40s, climbing his way up, he wasn't constantly thrown into first-round massacres against Federer or Djokovic. He was given the chance to develop, to build momentum, to establish himself before facing the giants. That's the opportunity that Eala is being denied. The comparison between Eala's path and that of other young stars is stark. Look at Coco Gauff's rise. Gauff burst onto the scene at Wimbledon with her upset of Venus Williams, but that was a gift from the draw gods. After that breakout moment, she was carefully managed, given wild cards into events where the draws were favorable, allowed to build her ranking gradually. By the time she was facing top 10 players regularly, she had already accumulated the wins and the confidence to compete at that level. Eala hasn't been afforded that same development curve. The question that haunts this entire controversy is, why? Why would the tennis establishment treat one of its most marketable young stars this way? The answer, as Castillejo suggested, is complex and uncomfortable. At its core, professional tennis is a business. The people running the sport are not evil, but they are making decisions based on short-term financial pressures rather than long-term development of the game. When a tournament director looks at a draw and sees an opportunity to create a blockbuster first-round matchup by pitting Eala against a top seed, the temptation is overwhelming. That match will sell tickets. It will generate buzz. It will please the broadcasters. But what about the cost? What about the message it sends to young players around the world? What about the integrity of competition? These questions get lost in the shuffle because they don't have immediate, measurable financial consequences. You can't put a price tag on fairness. You can't quantify the damage done to a player's confidence by repeated early round exits against overwhelming opponents. So those concerns get ignored in favor of the quick profit. This is what Dyan Castillejo meant when she said they are killing the future to protect the present. The tennis establishment is so focused on squeezing every last dollar out of the current generation of stars that they are failing to invest in the next generation. They are treating rising players like Eala as expendable, as supporting characters in someone else's story, rather than as protagonists in their own right. The global reaction to Castillejo's speech has revealed just how widespread this frustration has been. Fans from every continent have shared similar stories about their favorite players being screwed over by brutal draws. The pattern is consistent across men's and women's tennis, across different eras, across different tournaments. The system is designed to protect the established order, and it does so ruthlessly. But there are signs that change might be coming. The sheer volume of attention that this controversy has generated has forced even the most stubborn tennis administrators to take notice. Sponsors are asking questions. Broadcasters are getting nervous about the backlash. The next generation of tennis fans is more savvy, more skeptical, and more willing to call out injustice than previous generations. They won't simply accept "that's just how it is" as an explanation. There are concrete steps that could be taken to address the concerns that Castillejo raised. The WTA could implement a protected ranking system for rising young players, similar to what exists for players returning from injury. They could create more transparency around how draws are conducted, perhaps even live streaming the draw process to eliminate any possibility of manipulation. They could establish guidelines that prevent unseeded players from facing top 10 opponents in the first 2 rounds unless absolutely mathematically necessary. These aren't radical ideas. They are common-sense reforms that would preserve the integrity of competition while still allowing for the possibility of exciting upsets. The question is whether the tennis establishment has the courage to implement such changes. Change is hard, especially when the current system benefits the people in power. But history has shown that when enough pressure builds, when enough people demand reform, change becomes inevitable. Dyan Castillejo's speech might be remembered as the moment when that pressure reached a critical mass. For Eala, the road ahead remains daunting. She is scheduled to compete in Doha next, and all eyes will be on the draw when it is released. If she once again faces a brutal matchup, the outcry will be deafening. The tennis world is watching now, really watching, in a way it wasn't before. Tournament directors know that they can't hide behind the excuse of random computer-generated draws anymore. They will be held accountable. But regardless of what happens with the draws, Eala has already won something important. She has won the respect and admiration of tennis fans around the world who see her as a symbol of perseverance in the face of an unjust system. She has become more than just a talented young player. She has become a cause, a movement, a rallying point for everyone who believes that sports should be a meritocracy. The 12 words that Dyan Castillejo spoke in that Manila press room have taken on a life of their own. They have been translated into dozens of languages. They have been printed on t-shirts and banners. They have been chanted by crowds at tennis tournaments around the world. "You are killing the future of tennis to protect the present stars" is no longer just an accusation. It has become a battle cry, a demand for justice, a promise that the next generation will not go quietly into the night. As we look ahead to the rest of the 2026 season, the stakes have never been higher. Every draw will be scrutinized. Every questionable matchup will be challenged. The tennis establishment has been put on notice. The old way of doing things is no longer acceptable. Fans demand transparency. Players deserve fairness. And rising stars like Eala deserve the chance to fulfill their potential without being sacrificed on the altar of short-term profits. This is the story that Dyan Castillejo gave us. This is the conversation she forced the tennis world to have. And whether you agree with every word she said or not, you have to admire her courage. In a world where most people in positions of influence stay silent to protect their careers, Castillejo stood up and spoke truth to power. She risked her reputation and her relationships within the tennis establishment to defend a young woman who couldn't defend herself. That kind of courage is rare. That kind of integrity is precious. And that is why this moment will be remembered long after the scores and statistics of this tournament are forgotten. So what do you think? Is Dyan Castillejo right? Are the draws really rigged against rising stars like Eala? Or is this all just the natural, unavoidable reality of a competitive sport where someone has to lose? Look at the evidence. Look at the patterns. Look at Eala's draw history compared to other players at similar rankings. And then ask yourself, is this really just bad luck? Or is something more sinister at play? The ball is in your court now. The conversation that Dyan Castillejo started doesn't end with this video. It continues with you. Share this story. Talk about it with your fellow tennis fans. Demand answers from the WTA and the tournament organizers. Let them know that we are watching, that we care about fairness, and that we won't accept injustice just because it's convenient for the people in charge. Eala will keep fighting. She will keep training. She will keep believing, because that is who she is. But she shouldn't have to fight alone. We need to fight with her. We need to demand a system that gives every player, regardless of their nationality or their marketing appeal, a fair chance to succeed based on their talent and their work ethic. This is Champions Tennis, and we stand with Eala. We stand with Dyan Castillejo. We stand with every young player who has been screwed over by a system that values profits over people. And we will keep fighting until the future of tennis is protected, not killed. If you believe in fair play, if you believe in giving young athletes a real chance to succeed, then smash that like button right now. Show the algorithm, the YouTube algorithm, which might be the only fair one left in sports, that this story matters. Help us spread this message to every corner of the tennis world. The more people who see this, the harder it becomes for the establishment to ignore the problem. Drop a comment below with #JusticeForAlex. Let's flood the comments section. Let's make so much noise that the WTA has no choice but to respond. Let's show them that fans around the world are united in demanding change. Your voice matters. Your engagement matters. Every like, every comment, every share is a vote for fairness and transparency in tennis. And if you haven't already subscribed to Champions Tennis, what are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update. We are not going to let this story die. We will follow every development. We will track every draw. We will hold the tennis establishment accountable. And we will celebrate when Eala finally breaks through and achieves the success that her talent deserves. This is more than just tennis. This is about standing up for what's right. This is about protecting the integrity of sport. This is about ensuring that the next generation of athletes gets a fair shake. Dyan Castillejo showed us what courage looks like. Now it's our turn to show that we have the courage to demand change. The future of tennis is at stake. The future is Eala. The future is every young player grinding on practice courts around the world, dreaming of Grand Slam glory. They deserve better than a rigged system. They deserve better than being used as sacrificial lambs to prop up aging stars. They deserve a chance to write their own stories. And we are going to make sure they get that chance. Stay loud. Stay passionate. Stay engaged. Because this fight is just beginning, and we are not backing down until justice is served. Champions Tennis signing off. Keep swinging, keep fighting, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace out.
Nabigo si Eala sa kanyang rematch kay world number 2 Iga Swiatek sa Madrid Open. Bagamat mabangis ang simula ni Alex, nagawang makabawi ni Iga.
Alex, after a terrific year last year, how does it feel to be making your main draw debut at Melbourne?
It feels great. I'm super excited. Kamusta mga kapong Pinoy? Surprise! Excited na akong imbitahin kayong lahat na manood sa mga laban ko sa Mubadala Abu Dhabi.